Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. So
what's going on, everybody? Can y'all hear that? So I'm gonna put you in your proper perspective. We're gonna get it started. What's going on? Hotep to the Pan-African Black world. This is your brother Shabazz, coming to you live with the proper perspective. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. Please make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and select all so that you get the notifications every time we go live or post a pre-recorded video or just drop some comments. Now, we're going to get into something tonight. I probably plan to ruffle some feathers. Y'all can join along, drop comments if you so desire. But like I said, I plan to ruffle some feathers. The truth don't care about your feelings. Now, if you're not new, then you already know this is the channel where we look beyond the smoke and mirrors to see the real picture, to see the big picture. So tonight, in spite of my illnesses, we're going to do a bit of a breakdown. So I've heard some other people doing some analyses of the FBA flag. And it's some things that kind of hit me. I was like, okay, I got to think about this. I hadn't necessarily taken a lot of time into trying to debunk their flag. I figured, hey, the flag is the flag. It ain't my flag. I wouldn't rock it, but I never really thought to take time to really analyze their flag. And so when I did, some things started coming up. And I'm like, hold up now. So we got, the 3 stars on their flag. And if you saw the thumbnail on the page, then you see I got their flag into the image. So they got the 3 stars. It's the flag that you see most of them, not all of them, or I'll just say a lot of them, because clearly not all of them are promoting the flag. And a lot of them have started trying to walk away from Mr. Nasheed himself. And now we just the delineation people. But the flag is the flag. And it's the foundational Black American cult, CIA COINTELPRO flag that it is. Once I began to start looking at it and thinking about it and testing the theories and looking up some information about it. So shout out to Pro Woman 67 that's in the building. Hey, cuz, peace. What's going on? How you doing? So I gotta be honest. I appreciate anybody for showing up. Please stay tuned because we're gonna get it cracking tonight. So I gotta be honest with you. Like I said, at first I was not really I just never really spent that much time. I spent so much time debunking their actual claims that I was just like, leave the flag alone. But then I started looking at it. And so the more I looked at it, the more I realized something fishy going on. That flag, once you peel back the layers, the flag itself don't hold up. It makes sense that the whole ideological movement is a mismatch. The flag itself, it literally starts from the foundation of their ideology with nonsense. So the flag, it too collapses under the weight of their own logic. It's another brother, brother Unc, who says a pseudo dies on his sources. I'm channeling that kind of energy a bit. So I sources, I did what I do. Let me look at the source. Let me look at the symbolism. Let's look at the history. And what I found was a trail of tears, excuse the pun, so deep that I had to name this video what I named it, the 3 stars of stupidity. So let me be clear, because now what this is not about is hating Black history. What this is not about is subverting Black history. This is not about insulating or isolating Black history. Yeah, I know Black History Month is over, but Carter G. Woodson himself said he wanted us to be dealing with Black history all year round, so what the heck? What I am trying to do, if you want to look at it from a Black history perspective, what I'm trying to do is just do my own little bit in helping to protect Black history from being hijacked by these CIA cult ideologues. Now, if you're ready, well, we're gonna go point by point. We're gonna go star by star. So they got 3 stars, like I said. Star number 1. Now, according to the FBA advocates, they say something around the phraseology of the first star represents the Aboriginal Blacks, the indigenous Black populations of North America. Something like that. I'm like, okay. Right off top, it sounds okay. You know, I read Ivan Van Sertima. I know that there's some stuff in his works. That's not his only work. That's not his only exclusive thesis. But I know a lot of people gravitate towards that work. And I remember reading a bunch of stuff about the Olmecs. And I've read some stuff about the Aztecs and the Incas and the Mayas. And I know a lot of people like to take liberties. But yeah, the Olmecs, the first people over here in the North America area, not the United States. And that's where the first problem is. If that first star actually represents the Aboriginal Blacks of North America, then we have to ask, where did those populations actually live? Because they didn't live in the contiguous 48. Y'all know what that is, right? The contiguous 48. I love that phrase. But that's the United States minus the 2 that ain't attached to Turtle Island. The contiguous 48. So that's, everything but Hawaii and Alaska and Puerto Rico. But since that's the sphere that the FBA like to claim, then why are they talking about the whole of North America? North America includes Canada, the contiguous 48, and Mexico. So North America itself doesn't only include whatever Black populations that there might have been if they were there. It's not stuck with like Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi as the southernmost areas. It goes beyond that. And that's why some of our enslaved African ancestors, they took to the Underground Railroad and went south. Now, the FBA would tell you, once you crossed over the border, you ain't in the lineage no more. Again, more nonsense. But the Aboriginal Black populations, the ones that we have evidence for, the ones that people point to, when they say the Blacks of the Americas, when they say the Blacks in North America, they ain't talking about the contiguous 48. They talking about a population, whether they are Black or not, is still up for grabs, is still, a controversial topic. But those people are in what we call Mexico, what we call Central Caribbean and South America. Those were the Aboriginal populations that we're calling Black I'm not even going to deal with whether or not we can prove that they're black or not. But we're calling them black. Okay, I'll give you grace. I'll say, okay, they was black for sake of this argument at least. I'm not saying they weren't black, but I am fully aware of the difficulties in proving this in a scholarly forum. Now, we can say whatever we want amongst ourselves and on these YouTube streets and up and down the roads, and we ain't got to have facts. But that ain't what I'm about. But anyhow, the Aboriginal Black populations, as it were, the ones we have evidence for, those are the ones that live in Mexico and Central America and the Caribbean, not in the contiguous 48. So if you want to claim your first star on the map, on the flag, your first star puts you in direct lineage, in direct connection with people you say you don't want nothing to do with. The blacks of Mexico, the blacks of Central America. But you say, no, they ain't us. Then why you got them on your flag? Why you got them on your website if they not us? So right away, we have this. Let's go back to high school. We have a problem with the geography. Your geography teacher is laughing at you. You're putting a star on your flag, claiming ancient people who live thousands of miles away from the land that you are trying to claim. And you say they are part of your foundation. Well, if they are part of your foundation, guess what? Then they can get in the line for the reparation check. You got them on your flag. You got them on your official FBA website. But it gets even worse than that. It gets so much more worse than that. Now, the FBA ideology, by its own admission, they are mentally opposed. They are spiritually opposed. They are politically opposed to linking up with black people from those regions. They don't want nothing to do with Afro-Mexicans. They don't even think that Afro-Mexicans exist. They don't even want, they're trying to drop the Afro and the African from their wording and their terminology and their identity, because they say, we're the only blacks over here in the Western Hemisphere that use that. But the Afro-Mexicans would say, pardon me. The Afro-Cubans would say, hold up, what is this you're talking about? The Afro-Brazilians, the Afro-Guatemalans, they're all descendants of those Aboriginal Blacks of North America. So let me ask you a simple question. How can you claim a people on your flag, but then reject their living descendants in your life, in your politics, in your culture, in your movements? It just don't make sense. The math ain't mathing. The math ain't mathing at all. If you're going to put the ancient Olmecs onto your flag, that's fine with me. But if you're going to claim them as the first black people of the Americas, that means you're claiming people who lived in Mexico and South America. Now, I don't have a problem with that. I'm a Pan-Africanist. Shout out to Larry Bird 75. You live? I'm trying to be live. I am live. Now, whether or not I'm getting live, whether or not we lit over here, that's up to you to determine. But yes, this is a live broadcast. Shout out Larry Bird Live for hanging in there or showing up. So, you know, as a Pan-Africanist, I don't have a problem with you claiming the Olmecs as a part of who we are. But as an FBA ideologue, as an FBA advocate, as an FBA thug, You keep swearing nobody else. We're isolated. We're insular. I would say, yeah, the Olmecs, that's Black history. Afro-Mexicans is Black history. We are all African people. So it's we are all African people. And we all have a story in these Americas. Some of it is connected and some of it is disjointed, but it's all, like Booker T. Washington said, separate fingers on one black fist. So it is absolutely Black history, African history, American history. It's also Latin American history. But is this FBA ideology? It's not, but it is, because the FBA claims them. You're using that ancient DNA to decorate your flag. You have embedded them into your flag, but you reject their breathing descendants today. There's a logical, what do they call it? Cognitive dissonance? I'm not sure if that's the right term. But you're trying to be historical and you're being ahistorical. Now, maybe somebody would call it historical tourism, but without shadow of a doubt, it is the first crack in the flag. Now, Larry Bird, you're quite a jokester. I appreciate you. I appreciate you, but I'm not putting your little stupid comment on the screen. But yeah, you can go ahead and take yourself to bed, bro. So, but okay, so strike one, star number one, strike one. Let's go ahead and move to star number two, because now they get around to claiming the Black explorers. They say that the second star represents the Black explorers who came to this continent, before the white folks, before or right alongside Columbus. The Africans who came with the Europeans, the men who helped explore and settle this continent. And some of them will go so far as to bring up, they'll bring up John Horse. Bet you don't know who John Horse is. Bet you don't know what his real name is. You so much in love with the WASP, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, and their hegemonic Yurugu culture, that you calling that black man out his name. His name was Juan Caballo. You choose the English version because it makes you feel better about your English language and your Englishness. You coconut, you. Yeah, you claim to be the people who are at the avant-garde of the culture, and you're bastardizing everything. You're calling him out his name. That's a form of disrespect. His name was Juan Caballo. But you don't want to call him that. You don't want to call him that because that begins to open a door. Wait a minute. How is a brother named Juan Caballo? That don't sound like foundational Black American name. Guess it's time to ask him where his papers is. Where was you born? What's on your passport? Larry Bird, you got time tonight. Yeah, you got time all your life, bro. So let's talk about who these Black explorers really are. You're claiming them on your flag. You're claiming them as a part of our identity. But then you don't like nobody that ain't from here. So a Black Conquistador who came over here, that's a Black explorer, named Juan Garrido. Well, he was born in the Kingdom of the Congo. A world traveler of his own, for good or bad reasons. He left the Congo and went to Portugal. He voluntarily crossed the ocean and he joined a bloodthirsty European named Hernan Cortes, and he helped conquer Mexico City. Back then it was called Tenochtitlan. Not sure if I said that correctly. I did my best. But he actually, quite historically, and this is what makes him a part of Black history, whether it's February or not, he became the first person to plant wheat in the Americas. Before him, whether Canada, the contiguous 48, or Mexico, or even parts of the Caribbean, there was no wheat over here. He brought it here. First person to plant wheat in the Americas, a Black man from the Kingdom of the Congo. He's one of those Black explorers that's embedded into the second star of the FBA flag. And he died in Mexico City. That's just one of the Black explorers. Peace to the American dream, guy. Peace to you. Thank you for joining. Now let's keep moving, because he ain't the only Black explorer. Juan Valiente. That's another conquistador. Now, he didn't necessarily have all the quote unquote freedoms that Garrido is purported to have had. But Juan Valiente made a deal with his master, with his owner. He said, let me go fight as a conquistador, and I'll cut you in on all the profits. Now, y'all know that the European is bloodthirsty and money hungry. So that deal was made. And Juan Valiente went to Guatemala. He fought in Chile. He earned his freedom. He got land. He got married. He lived and died in South America. South America. But this is the second star on the FBA flag. The flag where they say is just about us in the United States. But they claiming South American ancestors. But then they want to turn around and on the South American Black ancestors and the Mexican Black ancestors. So here we go. Y'all ever heard of Sebastian Toral? He helped conquer the Yucatan. He earned his freedom through the sword. He settled in Merida, Mexico. Another Black explorer on the FBA flag, but the FBA people say we ain't got nothing to do with them people. These are the men that the second star is supposed to represent. This is the lineage of the second star. But let's snip them away, because we can't let them get in line for the reparation check. So here's the problem with the FBA narrative. For the most part, these men were voluntary, at least partially voluntary. They chose to come. They chose to fight. They expected to be paid and compensated and remunerated for their fight. Now, you could say that they were entrepreneurs of empire, but again, they were Black explorers. I grant you that. Several of them were born on the continent before they came over here. So they are Africans in the Western Hemisphere. They are claimed by the star. They are represented by the second star of the FBA flag, but then the FBA people say, F them. Right after you claim them, then you throw them under the bus. They are the ancestors of Afro-Latinos. Since you want to chop it up and put everybody in separate groups, they are not the foundational Black American ancestors. So why they on your flag? So let's do this again. Is this Black history? Yes, indeed. Is this African history? Yes, indeed. Is it American history? Absolutely, yes, indeed. It's American history. It's North American history, because that includes Canada, the contiguous 48, and Mexico. Oops, it's American history because it's also in Chile. It's Central American history. Now, is this FBA by ideology and by creed? Absolutely not. So why is it on the flag? Why you got it on your flag? I told you at the beginning, the flag don't make no damn sense. If you really want to get technical about it, a Ghanaian American, a Jamaican American, all they got to do is say, hey, them's my peoples. So I'm on your flag too. Much to your digress, much to your chagrin. They can look at Juan Garrido and say, that's us. We came here voluntarily just like they did. Now, won't they get the FBA people panties in a bunch? Because the FBA rejects the connection. But they forgot they made the connection on their own flag. So here we go. Yeah, Larry Bird, 75. Cut it out. Is it hurting your feelings to learn this truth, my brother? That your flag don't make no daggone sense, my brother? Cut it out. Throw in the towel is what you need to do. So tell me this. If the first star represents some non-FBA people, and the second star represents some non-FBA people, what does that say about the flag? Sound like the flag is just as confused. Sound like the flag is just as stupid as the arguments that the FBA people, when they start spewing out their nonsense. Just like Larry Bird. Name top 3 things Pan-Africans have done. Go look at my other videos. I got 4 or 5 of them, and I've already done it. I'm not repeating that. I treat most of my class, I treat most of my video sessions like I treated my classes when I was officially employed. If you missed the lecture, get the notes. You can't claim the star without claiming the people, especially when you yourself created the flag and told us what the star represents. The people are Afro-Mexicans, Afro-Chileans, Afro-Guatemalans. That's the very people that the FBA movement refuses to link up with. But you got them on your flag, you got them on your website, and you are naming them the Black explorers who came here before the Europeans. Contradiction number 2, strike number 2. Now, technically, I ain't even got to go no further. 2 strikes, this ain't a baseball game, but 2 out of 3, 66%. That means at best, if this were a test, at best you got a 33. You got an F on your flag, insignia, representation, what it means. Let's see. Let me see. Who are the other goons in here? Let's see. Super Gang 8902. Shout out to you. Thank you for joining in. Foundational African American. All right, bro. I'm with you with that. Foundational African American. I'd have been a whole lot happier with the term, not the ideology per se, but I could roll with the term if they would have kept Africa in there instead of trying to snip it out. But that's me. Now, FBA Mac Blast. Okay, yeah. Haha. You're here though, aren't you? Appreciate your presence, fool. Peace to the gods. Super Gang, peace to the gods and all the positive people in the universe. Claiming the people that sold you is crazy work. Claiming the people that bought you is crazy work. You idiot. As long as you keep claiming the foundation, just understand where you're going to be, because the foundation of anything and everything is at the bottom of the construction, and that's where you're going to stay. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the third star. I'm going to try to go easy on the third star, because the third star is the only one that make any sense. This is the star that represents the enslaved Africans who came over here and their African descendants. These are the ancestors who were trafficked here, who were enslaved in the United States, who built this country with unpaid labor, which is why we call ourselves African American. I have no problem with that star. That's the real star. They should have just put one star on there, because that's all they really care about. But that star is valid. But here's the thing about a three-legged stool. If one leg is weak, then the stool wobbles. If two legs are weak, the stool collapses. And so I've just proven that two of the three stars don't hold up. You got a 33 on this test, young man. You need to go back and reconfigure. The first star claims Aboriginal Blacks who lived in Latin America, whose descendants you reject today with your chest-beating, loud, wrong-ass selves. The second star claims Black explorers who came voluntarily, not necessarily in chains, who settled in Latin America, not the contiguous 48. So now you have a flag where 2/3 of the symbolism points to people on the outside of the FBA zeitgeist, outside of the FBA cult movement. 66% of your flag is about people that you say you ain't got nothing to do with. And well, at that point, you might as well trash the whole damn thing. Because if two of the three stars are based on the logic, as I've outlined, that is as shaky as I've outlined, then the symbol doesn't represent anything. It doesn't represent history. It doesn't represent your history as you lay it out. It represents confusion as you continue to represent yourself as a confused human being. It represents wishful thinking. Quite frankly, it represents cultural appropriation, symbolic appropriation, identity appropriation. It represents trying to build a bigger story by borrowing ancestors who don't belong to your creed. And that's not what Black history is about. That's not what being an African American is about. Now, it clearly is what being a foundational Black American is about. Confusion, illogical claims, false narratives, nonsense. But again, whether we're only dealing with Black history in February, or we're actually doing what Carter G. Woodson intended us to do, talk about Black history all year round, and talk about Black history as it relates to every Black populace on the planet, because Carter G. Woodson was an internationally lensed individual. He never said, he never wanted anybody to only deal with the contiguous 48. He knew that Black history is big enough, that Black history is wide enough, that Black history doesn't need to steal from Afro-Latinos in order to be impressive, but that Black History Month and that Black history curriculums can include Afro-Latinos and can include continental African achievements, successes, culture. But see, when you build a flag on a weak and false foundation that is cracked from its very inception, don't be surprised when people start pointing out the holes. So again, here's where we are. The FBA flag has 3 stars. One star is geographically dishonest. One star is historically contradictory. And one star, just one, actually holds some resonant weight. That means this flag as a symbol, this flag as a test of logic, this flag as something that you want to wave and be proud of, is a failure. Just like the ad hominem attacks that the babies called FBA sling in the chat room. I appreciate your presence. You're helping the algorithm. Now, I'm not saying this to tear anybody down, although I could tear down an FBA person who's so proud of his identity that he's going by the name of a white basketball player. I can do ad hominem attacks, but this is your brother Shabazz. I tried to talk to you with a little bit more respect than that. So I'm not really here to try and tear you down. I am here to point out the ridiculousness of the assertions. Now, if that hurts feelings, I'm sorry, but truth is truth. I'm saying this because truth matters, history matters, facts matter, facts over feelings. And when ideology tries to rewrite, when ideology tries to reshape the truth and history and logic in order to fit a political agenda that ain't got no engine in it anyhow, somebody has to speak up. If you're FBA and you rock with the flag, if you're in those spaces, keep playing yourself. It doesn't matter how many people wave the flag with you. You all look like idiots. Everybody that knows this truth, everybody that knows these facts, these are not hidden. These aren't hidden colors. They're not hidden facts. People from these areas in Central America, they know who the Olmecs are. They know it ain't you, but you got them on your flag. People in Mexico know who their lineage is and who their ancestors are. They know it ain't you, but you got them on your flag. It don't matter if 50,000 of y'all is waving it. 50,000 fools. I'm here to ask you to think. I'm here to ask you to do your own deep dive and check the symbolism. You ain't gotta like me. But if you go look it up, you can't deny the facts. If you look at the history, ask yourself, does all this nonsense really hold up? You know it don't. That's why you don't want to talk about it. When anytime the truth comes to you, you resort to name calling. Okay, 2-year-olds, have at it. J Lethal 7. Yes, Jamaicans don't have to be told to call themselves African Jamaicans because Jamaicans recognize their African ancestry, and some of them do actually call themselves Afro-Jamaicans. And you do know that there are other ethnicities in Jamaica. These questions of yours are foolish. The fact is, the black man with a white man's name is on the wrong side of facts, is on the wrong side of truth, is on the wrong side of history. Now I'm reading these comments. Y'all really tripped me out. No, I'm reading the comments because at least that's what I was told. That's a way to increase the engagement. You droit. Now here's what I need from you. Now, I know if you're an FBA, I know you got your pennies in a bunch. But if you're not FBA, because I don't do this, I really don't do this for the FBA. I know cult members cannot be decultized with truth and facts. It takes a special set of skills to pull somebody out of a cult. And I ain't got those. And I don't pretend to have those. I do this for the people who are sitting back and listening, and they're saying to themselves, that don't make no sense. And so if you're Pan-African, if you're authentically pro-Black, if you're Afrocentric, then more than likely this breakdown makes some sense to you. So whoever you are, if you see the contradictions the same way I see them, hit that like button. I don't expect the FBA to hit the like button. I don't know why the FBA even come over here. They're not gonna get a fair shake with me unless they know how to talk responsibly, and they don't. That's why I look at the comments. Keep looking for something that sounds reasonable. They don't have it. It's not a cult. It's just my lineage. It ain't even a lineage, fool. Your lineage is on your own personal family tree. We all do not have the same lineage. We are an ethnicity. We are not a lineage. Look the word up. Get familiar with the dictionary. That's the reason you got 2 stupid stars on your flag, because you're not checking anything inside the realms of factual evidence. Now, if facts matter to you, then I'm sure parts of this breakdown made sense to you. If you don't like contradictions, then I'm sure parts of what I have said make sense to you. That's who I do this video for. Let me know how you feel. I already know that the FBAs are going to say, well, with all of those truths, with all those facts, don't nobody got time for that. You're ugly. You're 6. So if you are of the same mind as me, share this video. Send it to somebody who rocks. Yeah, if you want to piss them off, send it to somebody who rocks with that flag, and maybe we can wake them up. But I don't have any sense of that. Send it to somebody who needs to see this breakdown. Send it to a group chat of yours. Put it out there on Reddit if you so desire. Post it on your timeline. We can get this conversation kicked into overdrive. Bring your comments. If you got anything that you want to challenge what I said. See, here's the thing. If you're an FBA advocate and you want to show where I'm wrong, I'm wide open for that. Tell me I'm wrong about what the star represents. You think he cooking? I already cooked, you idiot. Because you ain't got nothing to say. You can't defend the first star. You can't defend the second star. But you will continue rocking the flag. Yeah, I did cook you. But comment below. Tell me, which star do you think is the most dishonest? Which comment do you think is the most disrespectful? Is it the first star with the Aboriginal Blacks? Is it the second star with the Conquistadors, most of whom didn't even touch the contiguous 48? Or do you think the whole flag needs to be at best redesigned, if not thrown in the trash and burnt up? Let me know. Now, if you are new here, go ahead and subscribe. Hit that like button. Hit the notification bell. Because this is the kind of deep dives that I do on this channel. I deal with history, I deal with logic, I deal with truth, I deal with facts. I don't deal with shortcuts. I entertain the trolls. But I don't care about the trolls. I don't care about the FBA ideologues who can't think 2 inches off their nose. So again, this is your brother Shabazz. This is the proper perspective. And if you got anything else that you want to say, like I said, let me know. And I'm gonna catch you on the next one. Hold on. Let me see. Hold on. So I got a comment. No, don't leave. There was no contiguous 48 then. So why would that make any sense? The contiguous 48 has always been right there. That doesn't make any sense. The contiguous 48 are the 48 states of the United States Dominion. They were right there. They haven't gone anywhere. So now the white basketball player says, I don't care about the flag personally. Of course not. It's easy to not care about the flag once you've been shown that it makes no effing sense. I care about focusing on my Black American family, you integrationist idiot, and protecting our culture. Our culture is not under attack by but one group of people. Our culture is under attack by white supremacists. Our culture is under attack every day by white supremacists who try to remove Black history from the curriculum, who try to remove Black monuments from public spaces. Not a Black immigrant, whether the Black immigrant be first generation or second or third. Our culture is attacked by white supremacists, by Republicans especially. But you don't see why that's wrong. It's not wrong to care about your culture. It's wrong to attack people who are not attacking your culture. It's wrong to attack people who are in the same boat as you. So, you know, let me see. Let me move on to what the next comment is. There were no 48 states when the conquistadors were around. Again, you missing it all together. Are you going to tell me that the 48 states, as they are known, regardless of the geographical lines, were not sitting here on Turtle Island? You're not saying that. You are making a political statement, not a geographical one. I'm making a geographical statement. So why does it make a difference whether they reached it or not? We're talking about the entire American continent, not just the North. I am literally talking about. Okay, let me slow it down. Since we are talking about, I agree with you. We are talking about the entire North American continent. So we're talking about Canada. We're talking about the contiguous 48. I'm not going to name all 48 states, but if you tell me you don't know what geographical territory I'm talking about, then I'm going to use that I word again. And we're talking about Mexico. Those are the three political territories, political state entities of North America. And so if we are talking about the Black Conquistadors that came over here, because that's star number 2 on the FBA flag, they didn't go to Canada. They didn't come to the contiguous 48. They went to Mexico and South America and the Caribbean for the most part. Some of them slightly entered into small sections. And what I'm saying is, I don't have a problem if you claim them. The problem is your flag claims them, and then your political ideological talk says they not us. That's the problem. If you claim the conquistadors who went to Mexico as part of your heritage, as part of your culture, as part of your lineage, though that's the wrong term, then you got to have space and grace for them to be here alongside with you. Whether that means they get a check, probably they do, because they are in the lineage that you are claiming. Now, I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if I answered the question or the statement, Darker Visions Media, but that's my position. That's what I'm saying about claiming the contiguous 48 and claiming Canada and claiming Mexico. It's on the flag. It's built into the design and the meaning of the flag. So why are you so mad at them for being here? Why you want to kick them out if you claiming them on your flag? Why are you joining the MAGA movement to be against them? It's not a protection of your culture, because they not attacking your culture. The white basketball player is still in here. Now, J Lethal 7, again, you're asking questions that are not relevant to this conversation. Now, I got another video on Akata, and I don't have a problem discussing Akata, but I'm not going to discuss Akata without discussing African booty scratcher. There's no need of trying to play this game like it's just a one-sided thing. And it's no need of trying to play this game as if all of the Nigerians or most of the Nigerians lean into this thing. There are slurs and derogatory terms that have come from both sides of the Atlantic. And again, even if you were 100% right, if the Nigerians calling us Akata was that much of a problem, and you call Nigerians the immigrants that you got a problem with, why one of your stars represents Black immigrants? The Nigerians are Black immigrants. Star number 2 is for the Black immigrants. Why is your star, why is your flag telling them you are just like us? But then everything that come out your mouth, you ain't nothing like us. That's still an ideological contradiction. Have the conversation that we're having. So let's see what else. I might not be able to read that. It's not as clear. Let's see if I can move it. There are immigrant descendant politicians who use their melanin as a shield from criticism to undermine us. Prove it. Give me one. Who are the immigrant politicians that use their melanin as a shield to undermine us? Because this is another talking point. I've debunked it before. But you tell me who they are, and you tell me how they're undermining. Because the last time somebody brought this up, what they said was they're in the Congressional Black Caucus, and all of the Congressional Black Caucus members have voted in favor of reparations. Let me go down the list. Do people like Barack and Kamala, who are acting as representatives for Black Americans, just to get voted in, but then refusing to give reparations or do anything specifically for us, mean nothing? Okay, one, acting like Black Americans. Again, your loaded question. Do people like Barack and Kamala acting like representatives? They're not acting like Black American representatives. Barack Obama said, he said before he got into office, he is not acting like an African American representative. He said when he ran for the presidency that he was running for the presidency of all Americans. He didn't pretend to be something that he is not. And Kamala didn't pretend to be something that she's not. She said she was going to run for all Americans. She literally said, I'm not going to do anything specifically for Black Americans. So there is no pretending there. Now, I'm not saying that you got to like her comments. I'm not saying that you got to like his politics. I don't like Barack Obama's politics. I did not like her commentary. But whether I like and agree with their commentary has nothing to do with whether or not they are pretending to be Black. They are as Black as they are. That man's father is from Africa. He's a black person. He's living in America. Her grandfather is black, is a black Jamaican. She's living in America. Period. There's never, outside of the black Congress people, there's hardly been anybody that said they were going to work diligently to get us reparations. The people who have done it from the ground, have done it from the grassroots. The black man who spent half his life in Congress trying to get it, he wasn't blocked by any black immigrant. He was blocked by white Republicans. He spent all of his congressional life trying to get reparations to be voted for on the floor of Congress. He was blocked in every session by white Republicans, not black Jamaicans, not black Somalians, not black Nigerians. Shout out to Kevin, aka Mr. K. And he says, greetings to the Pan-African Terminator. I appreciate your presence here, my brother. I am definitely trying to terminate these talking points. I ain't trying to kill my brothers and sisters. I'm trying to kill this dead, bad-minded energy, though. J Lethal 7 says, do you take calls? Let's hash this out like respectful men. J Lethal 7, I do not take callers. I don't have that equipment, unfortunately. You know, I may look into it because I have seen quite a few people using that. So I may look into it later. But if you want to hash this out like respectful men, then just drop a respectful comment and I will respond. I'll calm myself down. The white athlete says I'm running and I'm sitting right here. I literally said I'm not going to sign off. So Dark Visions Media says those people from the past became us. The people in the present are not us. The same way we are not the exact same people that stepped off the boat. Those people from the past became us. Okay, but if we are not them, why are they still on your flag? And as long as they are on your flag, you are still connected to them, but you say you're not them. That is a contradiction. As long as they are still embedded in your flag, they have every right to say, oh, that's us. I'm getting into line with you because my ancestors are even on your flag. My ancestors are on your official foundational Black American website. Jay Lethal, yes, I went to the African booty scratcher. Okay, when did Black Americans tell our children to stay away from these so-called booty scratchers? Historically. Whether they said stay away from them or not, who cares? If you calling them out their name, you ain't got to tell them to stay away. If you calling them out their name, I imagine they would tell their children to stay away. So what else we got? What else you got? So let me see. Trying to see. Like something's going on. Let's see. Let's see. What is the next comment? It's not showing on my screen. Voting for something. Let me see if I can get that up. So Dark Visions Media says voting for something and using your leverage to force concessions is completely different. Now, before I even touch that, I might ask you to hash that out a little bit more, flesh that out a little bit more. Off top, I would say, like, I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but like I said, when the African American congressman put it to a vote, all of the white people, and they had the majority of the numbers, they voted no. It can't even come to the floor for a vote. So it ain't no concessions. You can't force concessions when you ain't got the numbers. Dark Vision Media. There were several times when Democrats had a trifecta in the government and still didn't pass. So you can't put that all on Republicans. You're right, and I don't. I don't. You know, like I said, I'm not that much of a fan of Barack Obama. I'm not that much of a fan of the Democrats. I am extremely anti-Republican for sure, but I am not a card-carrying member of the Democratic Party. So, and yes, I easily, openly say the Democrats have dropped the ball time and time again. The only difference that I see is there is a huge distinction between dropping the ball and throwing the ball in the trash can. And the Republicans throw the ball in the trash can. Now, Kevin, aka Mr. K, mentioned to them about the Pan-African chief, MKO Abiola, who was a Nigerian reparationist. Shall I give you the link to read out on your inbox right now? Yes, please give it here. I will take that. Give it to me on the inbox or put it in the chat. Doesn't matter to me. The white athlete says post it in the chat. But I'll take that. So again, okay, I guess officially we finished with the flag. Nobody wants this. Funny. None of y'all want to discuss the flag. None of y'all want to really try to support the flag. One person did, but okay. But you got any more talking points that you want to hash out? I'll take the talking points. Okay, you sent it to the Facebook. Okay, hold on a second. Let me jump over to Facebook and see if I can pull it up. Okay, let's see. So we're trying to pull this up. And we're going to see what happens. Okay, so now let's see if we can. Let me see if I can share my screen. So let me see if I can share my screen. Let me see. Present, share screen. Okay, so now we got this. Owolowo, an objective dissection of contemporary issues and intuitive perspectives by MKO Abiola, the reparationist. Now, this is dated July 7th, 2018. I hope you can see it. Let me see if I can make it any bigger on the screen. Let me see if I can make it any bigger. Does that doesn't do much. Okay. So you can, I think you can see it on the screen. Often when MKO Abiola is mentioned, he is usually associated with extraordinary philanthropy and being a successful international businessman. Most especially, he is remembered in the winter of the historic June 12, 1993 presidential elections that united Nigerians across ethno-religious divides. The posthumous Grand Commander of the Order of the Federal Republic Award by the federal government of Nigeria is the most recent feat associated with MKO Abiola. However, his role as a reparationist and his founding the reparations movement globally is not as celebrated. MKO Abiola was a reputable international business mogul who had links with many organizations, highly influential people. In October 1990, Abiola attended the Congressional Black Caucus meeting in Washington and was the recipient of the 1990 CBC Chairman's Award for Excellence in Service. The Congressional Black Caucus eulogized MKO Abiola with the following words. Now, I am deliberately trying to read as fast as possible to get this information out there. Because of this man, there is both cause for hope and certainty that the agony and protest of those who suffer injustice shall give way to peace and human dignity. The children of the world shall know the great work of this extraordinary leader and his fervent mission to right wrong, to do justice, and to serve mankind. The enemies which imperil the future of generations to come, poverty, ignorance, disease, hunger, and racism, have each seen effects of the valiant work of Chief Abiola. Through him and others like him, never again will freedom rest in the domain of the few. We, the members of the Congressional Black Caucus, salute him this day as a hero in the global pursuit to preserve the history and the legacy of the African diaspora. Now, Now, it is a bit lengthy. I don't know if I need to read anymore, but let's see. So let me see. I got this. Let me see. Mr. K, if there is a section you want me to specifically highlight, then let me know. It does go on further. It says that in December 1990, Chief MKO Abiola sponsored a reparations conference in Lagos. The inaugural conference was themed Reparations for Africa and Africans in the Diaspora. By June 1991, this bold reparations initiative was backed by then the Organization of African Unity, now called the African Union. Following a meeting by the member countries, a resolution was passed on the injustices of slavery and the need for reparations. So again, at least from the top, you see that here go a continental African working with African Americans on reparations for both of us. Now, I don't know if that, let me see. I'll bring myself back to the big stage. Now, I don't know if that helps or hurts, because I know the FBA is quick to say, so what? But so that's one example of Pan-African work togetherness. But let me go back for a hot second and see. So Darker Visions Media says, what I mean is they can use their voting power to block must-pass legislation to force concessions, especially when you're talking about military budgets and big spending bills. Okay, now, in theory, I agree with you. But at the same time, you have to know where each, what do you call it? Inside of Congress, every set of members sits on a different committee. And so every committee gets a chance to put specific bills onto the floor. But before it gets to the floor, it has to pass the committee. So it doesn't matter who you are. If you're sitting on a committee and there are more people opposed to your bill than in favor of your bill's not going anywhere. And you can only make concessions when you do political work with. When you work with people, you got to give something to get something. So what I'm saying to you is, and this is my thinking. Now, I don't mind going and doing the research, but this is my thinking. Let's say you got 7 people on the committee, and it's only 2 people in favor of the reparations bill going to the floor, and the other 5 are saying, nope, I'm not going to vote for it. What you going to do? How you going to get over that? You're not telling me that, I believe his name was Conyers, Congressman Conyers, I believe, is the man who, for the last 40 years of his congressional life, he brought the reparations bill up for a vote. And for 40 years, the white Republicans on the committee who outnumbered him said, no, that ain't got nothing to do with Nigerian Americans or immigrant blacks not wanting to work with. First off, they got to be on the same committee as him in order to do anything. If they weren't on that committee, then there is no work or no work to be done. I don't know if that effectively addresses your statement, but you can tell me in the comments. I'll move on to your next statement. You say, starting with the flag, the 1526 represents the starting point of FBA roots were born Dominicans who were from the Dominican Republic. Okay, be active, 8075. Now, again, I was only dealing with the 3 stars. I specifically said, but we've moved beyond that to some extent, but I was only dealing with the 3 stars. So I don't have a response. The 1526 represents the starting point of FBA roots. I don't even know if I would agree with that or not, but I would have to think about that a little bit more before I could determine, what my position is on that. But I'm reading your comment because you're putting it in there. So anybody else that wants to respond, you can support it, you can debunk it. It doesn't matter to me. Be active, which means that according to FBA themselves, Dominicans are the parents of FBA roots. I figured you was gonna say it anyhow. So there you go. There you have it. Now, what the FBA people want to say about that, because it seems to me that you are attacking the logic that's almost in the same fashion that I was attacking it. Like I said, I wasn't looking at that part of it. So Kevin says, read the next paragraph about his work in 1992. Okay, so hold on, Kevin. Let me 1992. Okay, so let me go back to the share screen. Nope, that ain't it. There we go. So let me go back to the shares. So let's read this next little section. On June 28th, 1992, a 12-member group of eminent persons on reparations was mandated by the Organization of African Unity to actively pursue reparations. Chief MKO Abiola was the chairman of the GEP, and other named members included Professor Ali Mazrui from Kenya, J.F. Ade Ajayi from Nigeria, Professor Samir Amin, Egypt, Professor Joseph Kizerbo, Burkina Faso, where my ancestors came from, Professor Amadou Mahat Imbo from Senegal, Congressman Ronald Verney Delums from the United States, Graca Machel from Mozambique, Miriam Makeba from South Africa, former President Aristide Perea from Cape Verde, Ambassador Alex Quezon Saki from Ghana, and Dudley Joseph Thompson from Jamaica. A Pan-African committee, if ever there was one. In April 1993, the first Pan-African Conference on Reparations was held in Abuja. The objective of the Reparations Conference was to formally institute a global movement to spearhead the reparations campaign. During the conference, a resolute communique was issued affirming the crimes perpetuated during the slavery era and the various manifestations of the protracted exploitation of Africa. Again, let me see. Come on back to the big screen. So again, all right, so we got that on the record, Mr. K. Now let's see if anybody wants to respond. But let me see. Larry Bird says represents the three groups who make up the ethnic group that would become the foundational Black Americans, the Black Aboriginal people of North America. Yeah, and as I said, the Black Aboriginal people of North America includes the Olmecs, the Black Mexicans, the Chileans, all the people that you say you ain't got nothing to do with. That's what I said earlier. So you're just reading what I already read, Larry Bird. The Black explorers and traders who had contact with the Americas before Columbus, the captives brought to the Western Hemisphere. Yeah, like I said, everybody that they ain't got nothing to do with you. So Zell 9408 says, we don't want our races mixed with foreign nations, but you do want your flag mixed with foreign nations. Your whole flag, 66% of your flag is mixed with foreign nations, but then you won't keep them out of the reparations pot. Okay, self-contradictory. Now, Beat Active says, Leopard 75, that's a pseudo story. There is zero evidence of that. Now, see, Beat Active is hitting you harder than I was. I was giving you grace and space. See, you said that I was being nasty. You started all these ad hominem attacks on me, but I was the one giving you grace and space, saying, I'm not even going to attack the whole Aboriginal thing. I'm just pointing out the logic of claiming the Aboriginal people and then saying, get out the line, is illogical. But Be Active is going to tell you, not only is your first star illogical, he's telling you that your first and your second star is pseudo history. Now, let me see if I can see that name. P.V. Ray, 1865. The fact that we haven't built anything with these other groups who come over here says it all. We welcome people with open arms and get disrespect in return. Two different statements. Now, you say we haven't built anything with these other groups who come over here. I tell you that is factually, that is patently false. We have built plenty of things with these other groups who have come over here. Now, if depending on what city you live in, and I have debunked this talking point several times, we have built plenty of things with other groups. There are thriving businesses all across this country today that are Pan-African in makeup, meaning they include African American ownership, they include Nigerian American ownership, they include Ghanaian American ownership, they include Jamaican American ownership. So we are building. I'm sorry if you don't see it. I'm sorry if somebody told you that it don't happen and you didn't have enough energy, enough initiative to go look it up yourself. But I got videos on that. So I'm not going to do a whole lot of this. I already did that in 2-3 other videos. But we've been building with other groups since the beginning of time, as it were. So Dark Visions Media, you hold the must spend bill hostage until someone brings the reparations bill to the floor, and that is what they get in return. They get to pass their budget. Okay, so tell me why Conyers didn't do it. If it's that easy, then why Conyers couldn't do it for 40 years? And mind you, most of the 40 years that he spent trying to do it, there were even fewer immigrant blacks in Congress than there are today, which means there were more foundational Black American blacks in Congress than there are today. They still couldn't get the votes. Now, again, I agree with you that under certain circumstances, yes, you have coercion politic tactics that you can employ. But what I'm telling you is the circumstances must be 100% lined up, and they never have been. You can't get to the floor if the committee says no. And if it was that easy, Conyers would have gotten it to the floor. He wasn't a stupid man. He was a very active and intelligent political person. He knew more than you and I how to coerce people and how to play politics. It still never worked because them white boys in the Republican Party said, we don't care. We will let our bill go and sit before we let your reparations bill come to the floor. Now, Kevin, Mr. K, make sure you read the last paragraph about what happened with him. Radical Pan-Africanists always found his death suspect and suspicious. Okay, that's a good point. So let me get to that last theory. So, okay, let me pull this back up onto the screen. So there have been many theories about what really happened to MKO Abiola after winning a free and fair election in 1993. His experience highlights the international dimensions of the issue. It exposes the dilemma of navigating through the perilous terrain of demanding reparations and somewhat confirms the existence of local saboteurs ready to scuttle plans, which sounds like what I was saying about Conyers and the other Congressional Black Caucus attempts to get the legislation onto the floor. to scuttle plans that aren't in tandem with certain powerful forces. The reparations debate continues as the world grapples with development challenges in Africa, the migration issue, and the ineffectiveness of foreign aid. It's been 20 years since MKO Abiola died under very mysterious circumstances on July 7th, 1998. Still, the reparations cause remains elusive. So again, and I agree with Mr. K, many of the most impassioned, many of the most driven Pan-Africanists have not fared too well in the stay alive game. So let's see. Okay, I'm not going to read the ad hominem from the white athlete. Let's see. Dark Visions Media, the squad could have leveraged their vote for Nancy Pelosi to get legislation to the floor like Medicare for all. The squad could have leverage. Now, the squad, again, when you say the squad, you're not talking about the Congressional Black Caucus. That's a different group. That's a different animal. That's a different pot. So you're talking about the when you say the squad, you're talking about the progressive members of the Democratic Party trying to get the legislation that Nancy Pelosi can work with. That's not the same as getting the bill onto the floor inside the inside the committee. It has to go to committee first. It has to go from committee to the floor. Once it goes to the floor, that's when they vote on whether or not it's going to go anywhere. And that's a different channel. So Beat Active says, there's no such thing as Black Aboriginal of the Americas. Aboriginal means indigenous, and indigenous means first people of the land. And FBA are not that. I agree with that. So Beat Active is historically accurate and correct. Now, Darker Visions Media, the CBC has more power than the squad to hold up legislation. Can you prove it? I mean, you can make the claim and then I can counter your claim. Can you prove it? I keep telling you, like, they don't. Like, I wish they did. I really do wish they did. And again, I hate when I'm in a position where I'm defending people that I don't necessarily agree with, because I'm not a fan of the CBC. But I do know that because I had to take the initiative and go look at it and look it up. And I'm like, oh no, people just wrong. It's not as cut and dry as people think it is. Yeah, I'm not putting ad hominem attacks on the screen. Let's see. So Kevin, Mr. K, says to PV Ray 1885, you do realize that there were Caribbeans that worked with Black Americans to build the new Negro movement that spearheaded the Harlem Renaissance and even build the Civil Rights movement. He probably doesn't realize it, and he will probably tell you you're not telling the truth, but that is fact. And like, because it was somebody else, well, and maybe that was PV Ray. But again, throughout our entire sojourn here under the dominion of Uncle Sam, especially the contiguous 48, we have always worked with each other. Now, that doesn't mean it has always been 100% hunky-dory, apple pie and peaches and cream, but we have always worked together. There has been some tensions, there has been some frictions, but we have always recognized Just like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King recognized, there are some things we agree to disagree, and we still keep fighting and working on the agenda. We do not let white supremacy or white supremacy ideology separate and divide us. Most of the Congressional Black Caucus members, I keep saying this, they stood up for, they signed on to the federal, the national reparations package. But it's not going to get off the Congress floor until there are fewer Republican ideologues sitting on the committee that permits, that allows for legislation to leave the library. Mr. K says, where are the politicians, lawyers, and lobbyists, trade unionists, judges working within power structure to work for their interests? If you, I mean, that's a good question, because if you really want to hold Congressional Black Caucus members to the carpet, if you really want to hold Democrats to the carpet, if you are Black MAGA and you really want to hold Republicans to the carpet, then you need a full frontal assault on their political offices. They have a DC office and they have a local office. You need to be getting with people in your city, because you are talking about the senators and the congressmen. So we're talking about people that have phone numbers and email accounts that you can directly access, and you can directly call them to the carpet and turn up the fire. If they know that 50,000 phone calls is coming in on Monday saying pass that bill, then you got something. But what we like to do is just sit back and say, well, they ain't did it, and they should have already did it. But what are we doing except trying to protect the possibility of the potentiality of the check that might never come? If it do come, you can't have it. So Mr. K says, where are the FBA politicians? Please, yes, not the African Americans. Most of the African American politicians don't even know that the FBA movement exists. But even if they do, where are the FBA politicians? Y'all ain't got none. Where are the FBA lawyers? Aside from Dennis Spurlock, y'all ain't got none. Where are the FBA lobbyists and trade unions and judges? This is Mr. K's statement. He says these FBAs must believe in the boogeyman, as evident with their imaginary Pan-Africanists who always remain nameless, that they always blame for all their problems and struggles. I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you at all, because again, I asked somebody earlier, show me some proof. Now, Mr. Don't Play says foundational Black Americans. Ooh, you really knocked it out that time. Okay, yes. Foundational Black Americans. Thank you. FBA. Yes. FBA, who ain't doing nothing. So PV Ray 1865 says, FBAs and the Africans should have a community together, but we don't. We should have a new culture that's intertwined with each other, but we don't. Why do you think that is? I disagree. Only in this sense. When you say we don't have a community, how is it that you mean? What is community to you? Because I think, for one, it depends on what city you're talking about. Where you from, brother? Because there are examples of FBA people. No, hold on. Let me get this straight. I'm not going to argue from the standpoint of honoring that term just yet. African Americans live in community with other Black immigrant groups. Now, for FBAs to live in community with anybody, like FBA, like, you know, for me, FBA still has way too much hate on its mouth to live in community with anybody. But I made this statement earlier. African Americans have businesses and joint ventures with a whole host of Black immigrant groups that live in this country who are Black American citizens, and so on and so forth. And I have said, I've done videos on this before. We got a quote unquote Pan-African. I'm going to use Pan-African perhaps a little liberally at this particular moment. Right now, I'm only talking Pan-African in the sense that there are at least two different types of Black folk involved. So there is a Pan-African credit union in one state. There is a Pan-African grocery store in another state. We got Pan-African schools in another state. Now, yeah, it ain't everywhere, but the Black immigrant groups themselves are not everywhere. African Americans are not everywhere. But where we are, we do live in close proximity to one another. And there are plenty of examples of us working together in business, working together in schools, working together in politics, and so on and so forth. It ain't 100%, but it ain't supposed to be 100%. It don't have to be 100%. Now, Dark Visions Media says, then you have to talk about the insincerity of sitting liberals. And that's a whole nother discussion. It is a whole nother discussion. It ain't got nothing to do with this particular conversation, but you should never be in a situation where you're going to talk about the insincerity of the sitting liberals and you're not going to talk about the insincerity of the sitting conservatives. The sitting conservatives right now have us in an undeclared war against half of the globe. They're blowing up boats in the Caribbean. They kidnapped a sitting president. They killed another sitting president or leader. These are the sitting conservatives, but you want to point a finger at the sitting liberals. Yeah, whatever. PV Ray, yes, I do. I'm talking about something new. Mr. Don't Play, playing himself to be a fool. If you're talking to me, then you're playing yourself to be a fool. If you're talking to somebody else, then I must have missed y'all back and forth. So I'm not going to jump into that at this particular moment. Mr. K says to PV Ray, read the books by Brenda Gale Plummer, Carol Anderson, and Ronald W. Walters about the working relationship history between Africans, Caribbeans, and Black Americans against anti-racial injustice. Now, there's a source for you. There's a source for you. Read that book and come back and let us know what you learned. Now, Mr. Don't Play is still playing himself with rhetoric. So, okay. PV Ray says, I'm from Louisiana. Darker Visions Media. How many people on the squad versus how many members are in the CBC when they could have held up Nancy Pelosi? They had a narrow margin and there's only a handful of them. How many people on the squad? Again, on the squad, you're talking about a strictly Democrat silo. The squad, whatever the squad does, that's something that they can do inside the Democratic Party. when you're talking about HR 40, that is not something that sits and exists inside the democratic mechanism. That sits inside the Congress itself as a whole. The squad don't got that kind of power outside of the democratic silo. Now, I'm trying to read these comments and the buttons ain't working. Okay. PV Ray says, look how we beefing for no reason. Now, I think that's funny. What is it? Show enough is here. 5670. Shout out to you. Show enough says teenagers be on the internet making FBA look bad. Now, I think that's a little funny. I'm not willing to call these folks teenagers. I think they're adults who just look bad. But okay, if they're teenagers, they're teenagers. Mr. K says there's a difference between those working professionals as politicians, lawyers, lobbyists, trade unionists who fight for justice than keyboard warriors who are loud mouths about justice. There's a whole hell of a lot of. Now, PV Ray says, I'm familiar with some of the books and will do, brother. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. So again, don't misinterpret what I'm doing here. I am, like, I'll keep saying this. I'm not a card-carrying member of the Democratic Party. I don't like them that much. I only like the Democratic Party in relation to the absolute criminal, horrible, insane tactics, strategies, and legislation that comes out of the opposition party, the Republicans, the MAGA crowd. So again, I'm not trying to justify the fact that the HR 40 bill has not gone as further than it has. I'm simply saying when I did the research, when I looked it up, what I saw was they didn't have the power, the coercion, the tactics. They didn't have the numbers. You can't even pork barrel legislation if you don't have the right numbers. And so if you don't have enough people on your team, and then part of your zeitgeist, part of your political thrust is to tell people don't vote at all or don't vote for the Democrat, well, then you're never going to get there because there's never been a Republican that was in favor of reparations, not the white ones or the black ones. So you can critique the Democrats for not doing enough, but then you got to critique the Republicans for not doing anything. Now, in this country, we got two parties. As far as federal, national elections are concerned, there are some cities, there are some states that have third parties or independent candidates. And if they are in those, if in those states, in those cities, they are viable candidates with good, strong traction where they could actually be effective and win, and you want to put your vote there, okay, fine. But again, if you continue to say, well, the Democrats ain't doing nothing, or the Democrats ain't doing enough, I agree with you, they ain't doing enough. But you cannot criticize the Democrats for doing not enough and then remain silent on the Republicans for doing nothing. Nothing at all. That's not how you win the game that you say you want to win. You want to win the reparations game. So rather than leaving the Republicans off the hook and vilifying the Democrats, you should vilify the Republicans and apply pressure to the Democrats. You need to be going to the Democratic whatever, the party, the rally, the convention, the meeting, whatever. Everything where a Democrat in office shows up, you ought to have you and your politically active squad standing right there on the front line. What about that bill? Mr. K says, sure enough, these FBAs are just keyboard warrior loudmouths. Hey. Let's see, Mr. K says, basically, you like the Democrat foxes that stand up to the Republican wolves, but dislike the Democrat foxes that are complicit and complacent with racial injustices against blacks. That's a very good way to put it. Because again, like I said, you know, it is clear, it is absolutely positively clear that the Republicans have done nothing to assist us, that the Republicans are actively working to set us back. They're the ones that want to go back to a time when America was great. They're the ones who are literally in Florida, I believe in Louisiana, they're literally making it illegal to teach Black history. Whether you call it African American history, whether you call it foundational Black American history, they don't want nothing in the curriculum about the melanated folk. And to leave them out of the conversation because you mad at some Democrats. Okay, then I would have to say, well, maybe that brother was right when he said it's some teenagers making y'all look silly. Because that is a silly position to take. It's Republicans that are destroying the public school system. Well, we don't need those schools. We can just teach ourselves. You see where that is getting us? The FBA is a bunch of self-taught ideologues who can't find a fact if it hit them in the face. Now, Dark Visions Media says, I'm a leftist though. So, hey, you know, I don't got no smoke for leftists. Most of the time, leftists, progressives, and revolutionaries. Usually leftists, progressives, and revolutionaries, usually they are trying to put legislation in place or hold legislation from losing place that have had some kind of benefit to Black America in general. And usually conservatives and everything on the right, no matter what label they get, are trying to strip it away and eliminate it. Yeah, let's see. Mr. K says, remember, Malcolm X describes Democrats as the fox and Republicans as the wolves. Indeed. Indeed. And I, you know, like I said, I don't disagree with that analysis. I'm simply saying, unless you are willing to build your own party, and for the most part, African Americans, foundational Black Americans, American descendants of slavery, so on, most of us are not willing to do that. The very few times that Pan-African organizations have worked to create our own parties, the vast majority of the African American public denied them, rejected them. So, let me see. Mr. K says, now he's talking to the white athlete, man. Where are your brains? And if you have them, start putting your brains on display for a change. Thank you, Mr. K. I appreciate that, because I was going to kick him out. Let me see. So Larry Bird, white athlete, Black man, Coconut you, where are you from? Where are you from, Larry Bird? Tell us where you're from. Let us see your papers. What's your DNA? Peace to Q Black 4415 says, peace, fam. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for dropping some comments, letting us know that you're here. We've been talking about the three stars of stupidity on the FBA flag, but we've also been taking some just commentary from folk about a whole host of FBA talking points that don't really amount to a lot, but they're interesting for conversation. So Larry Bird is from South Carolina. Larry Bird, you're from South Carolina. What you know about that E5 village down there? Are they open? So Mr. K says, FBAs love to quote Malcolm X about the Democrats, but they never like to quote Malcolm X who expressed the necessity of a black political party. And they absolutely hate the fact that Malcolm X said, you are not an American. They can't stand the fact that Malcolm X said, you are an African. But he said it. He said it forcefully. He said it multiple times. He meant it. But that's that cherry picking that FBAs like to do. So Darker Visions Media says, we had a Republican in California who called to bring our reparations bill to the floor when the Democrats tanked it. Okay. Enlighten me. Who was that? Who was the Republican in California? Who was the Republican in California? I would like to know that. I'm not going to say you lying. I just haven't heard. I'm always open for new information. So who was that? I'll wait for an answer. Let's see if we're going to get an answer. Well, maybe we're not going to get an answer. Let me see something. Okay, so no more answers. So, okay, cool. Like, I don't want to say, see, he ain't got no answer. I'm trying to give him time. Mr. K says, he says this to the South Carolinian with the white man's name. Why can't you put your brains on display to prevent yourself from asking such a moot question in an attempt to prove a point? And then he says, so Dark Visions Media, you mean a no-name Republican? I'm waiting. Now, don't have me go looking it up. But I'm waiting for, you know, this no-named Republican to be named. So are we getting a name? Where's Dark Visions Media with this name? So Larry Bird, since you said you just want to know what have you done for your community? Okay, now I like questions like this, but here's what I do. Before I answer the question, I'm going to request that you answer the question. So Larry Bird, what have you done for the community? What have you done for your community down there in South Carolina? First, you tell us that, and I'll tell you what I've done for the community. So let me see, what else have there? Let me see. So we're gonna go right through these. There is, so B075 says there's no FBA establishments, nowhere to be found in the real world. There's no FBA leadership because they disavow their leadership. They got leaders, bro. But their leaders told them, don't call me no leader. There is no FBA establishments nowhere helping other FBA. No, that's true. You know, as long as you lay hold to the title FBA, you cannot tether onto what African Americans are doing. You have to show and prove your own FBA accomplishments. So Larry Bird is now in his feelings again. BF continues his very strong polemic against the FBA thug cult. He says there's no FBA public schools paid and made by FBA for teaching all FBA. He says there's no FBA founded, no FBA founded and made housing programs to help other FBA in need with a roof over their head. Do y'all even have an FBA church? Because that's at least one surefire way to get some money through the collection plate. Churches know how to do that. Is there an FBA church that y'all can show us that you're building? Be Active says there's no FBA created light water establishments to provide all FBA with these basic necessities. There's no FBA farms. Even the Nation of Islam, a Pan-African organization in practice, even the Nation of Islam has farms. There's no FBA farms. There's no FBA agriculture. There's no FBA agriculture created programs providing FBA food on their table. So what does FBA have? Beat Active is killing y'all in these comments. He doing better than me. I was only here to assassinate the flag. He's assassinating y'all whole entourage. Beat Active continues. There's no FBA hospitals to ensure and secure all FBA well-being. The only FBA establishments is social media. FBA don't even own that. So what is FBA good for? And Mr. K picks up on what I said. We still waiting for Larry Bird to throw a three-pointer and tell us what his track record is in the community. What has he done as far as community work? That's what we're waiting on. So Larry Bird said, my name run good where I'm from. Yeah, I get what, Boston? I'm trying to see where you from. Answer that. Again. Now, so I guess Larry Bird ain't did nothing in the community. He ain't told us nothing. All he told us is he from South Carolina. He ain't said nothing that he has done. Now, shout out to I don't necessarily know how to say that. 4Inc 18. Shout out. You know, you putting up the little dragon faces or whatever that is. That's cool. That's cute. Thank you for being here. Dark Visions Media says Republicans move police to the right. Republicans move police to the right. All Democrats do is hold position and don't try to move back. It's called the ratchet effect. Okay, so Darker Vision Media, I thought you was going to tell us about the Republican that helped the reparations movement in California, but now you're trashing your own argument and bringing up a new one. And that's not even a bad thing. Republicans move policies to the right. Okay, I got you now. Republicans move policies to the right. This is true. And as I have been saying, moving policies to the right is an absolute attack on Black progress. Now, all Democrats do is hold position. This is true. I will never say that is enough. But if you have to choose, and as long as we are dealing with politics and elections, we have to choose. Unless we want to say we're going to be like the Amish and we're going to steer clear of it all. But in order for us to do that, we literally have to come together and fund our own projects. And we ain't going to do that. It's too much like hard work. So as long as we comfortable playing the game of politics, we got two choices. Let everything go as far to the right as Trump and MAGA Republicans want to take it, or hold ground, hold position. And then the Democrats, like any other politician, they not going to do any more than we forced them to do. Now, if you think that the only time that you got to be politically active is on election day, then that's why we don't get nowhere. Most of us just show up on election day. We don't go to school board meetings. We don't go to school meetings. We don't go to local senator meetings. We don't go to local Congress meetings. We don't show up at the governor's mansion. We just vote every 4 years. And that ain't how politics work. If you want the Democrats to do more than hold position, or if you really are a black MAGA Republican conservative type person and you want honest pushback, then you got to carry yourself down to those Republican offices. But you got to do more than just vote in November. So 4Inky says, LOL, are you paying? Where are you from, buddy? Look, you can read, like, where are you from? Are you a Pan-Africanist person, 4Inky? Where are you from, buddy? Mr. K, there are no FBA who are politicians, lawyers, lobbyists, trade unionists, judges working within the power structure to protect FBA interests. There are no FBA YouTube channels trying to tell you that you need to protect your interests inside the political spheres of power in DC or your own local town. That's what I'd like to add to what Mr. K said. All FBA does is talk loud. What was that old school hip hop song? Talking loud, saying nothing. That's what FBA is about. So let's see. So darker visions media. Republicans pull policies to the right. Democrats left. Progress. Okay, yeah, we already said that. Yeah. Mr. K says, and he says this to the white man, the black man with the white man's name, Larry Bird. And you're funny because you don't do but be a crybaby loudmouth, always asking where are you from, but never talk about the work you're doing. This is true. Like, we still waiting for Larry Bird to tell us what kind of work he's done. Okay, darker visions. So you finally got that man's name. The no-name Republican is now entered the room. Isaili. If I said his name wrong, I do apologize. Isaili, a Republican member of the California State Assembly, introduced a reparations-related bill and called for it to be brought to a floor vote in the legislature. Okay, great for the Republican. Great for the Republican. I would say it's about time that a Republican stood up and did something. Now, I don't remember what your earlier point was, because at first I was like, I just don't believe you. But okay, but what was your earlier point? Mr. K says, to Larry Bird, and I'm starting to believe I know where your brains are. Buried up your, I ain't gonna say that part, which is why you have for brains. They really duking it out in the comment section. So, okay, Darker Visions Media says his move drew attention because it was unusual for a Republican lawmaker to push legislation connected to reparations debates in California. Now, I would agree that is definitely unusual and it would draw attention. Let me see. So, okay, yeah, I'm skipping the white man name, black man person. So Satura C9E has said you have to advocate with your politicians in your localities. You must vote. You must make your voice be heard. Now, again, I've been trying to say that, but what I'm saying is you got to do more than that. Again, if you just show up in November, you ain't getting nothing. If you don't figure out how often does your congressperson come to your community? Most of them do town halls. Most of them do meet and greets. Most of them do something in their district. But most times, African Americans, whether they be FBA ideologues or not, don't show up. But then you get online and say, well, they ain't doing nothing. Well, you ain't doing nothing. Now, Beat Active says, where are the FBA created jobs and where can all FBA go to apply for any of those jobs? I'm gonna be in that line. If FBA got something popping, then I'm gonna be in that line. Darker Visions Media says the Republican I'm talking about is Bill Essayli. I ain't gonna never get that man's name right. Okay, so Darker Visions Media, you giving me a name, okay? So Bill Essayli, okay. Now, so Bill Essayli introduced legislation in California for reparations. The bills that he introduced. So I'm not, again, but flesh this out a little bit more. I'm not, I'm setting aside the antics of the chat room. I'm being, I'm not being, funny about it. So we got a Republican in California that called for reparations. Good. Now, what does that get us? Where are we going with that conversation, with that point? I meant to say they move policies to the right and Democrats stop progress to the left. I mean, I might agree with that because, again, I don't necessarily see a difference between stop movement to the left and holding position. I think they're still saying the same thing. And I agree with you earlier on that point. Most Democrats are only interested in holding ground. Now, I would suggest that, as a matter of fact, and I haven't seen an update just yet. But so, for example, so I would suggest that, for instance, the Texas election that's still going on right now. It's 10 o'clock on the East Coast, which means it's like maybe 8 o'clock, I think, in Texas. So maybe the polls are just beginning to close up now. And the part of the issue with that was whether or not a progressive Democrat can, could, and should win that Texas seat, or if a moderate Democrat can, could, and should hold that seat. Now, once the votes are tallied, we will know what happens. We will know what Texans decided, and we can discuss that and figure out what that means. But what I'm saying is that's a good example of a quote unquote a progressive Democrat and a corporate or a moderate Democrat. Now, and so I'm right there with you if you're saying that we don't have enough progressive Democrats, we don't have enough leftist Democrats, we don't have enough revolutionary Democrats. And it is a sad state of affairs to say that Democrats don't do enough. And all I'm saying is I'm 100% with that critique. I just don't like to give that critique without saying, and the Republicans don't do jack. for the most part. Now, yes, you've given me a new Republican. So you've given me one Republican, and I need to look him up. Bill Esiley, or I can't. Bill Esiley. So if we go looking him up, now, is that the only time that he has done something that is in favor of? Does it matter if that's the only time he has done something in favor of? Did he do it because he is truly in favor of, or did he do it for some other reason? Does it matter if he did it for a different reason? These are all, questions that are interesting. They're all questions that should be addressed. But again, I'm not denying, you gave me a new name, so I'm not denying that happened. Now, let me see. Mr. K and Larry Bird are having a quite spirited conversation. Mr. K asks Larry Bird, if you've never blamed Black immigrants for anything, then what is the point of claiming FBA and the purpose of so-called delineating? Well, that's a good question, because you can't have it both ways. You can't say, well, I ain't got no smoke with the Black immigrants, but I am a FBA. Well, FBA's entire position is, we got smoke for the Black immigrants. You can't have it both ways. So, okay, darker visions media. So my answer about the Republicans above. Okay, let me scroll up. Okay, well, I think I covered that then. I meant to say that they move policies to the right and Democrats stop progress to the left. And again, even in the Democratic Party, there is a huge disgruntlement and conversation, because the progressives are trying to push the party forward, and the corporates, the APAC clowns and sellouts, are definitely trying to hold ground. Let's see. So Satora says, agreed, we all must do something. We can't just complain about things. If you don't like what your representatives are doing, then run for office. Run for office yourself and make transformational changes. And if that's too much, then find out who else wants to run for office. Put together a group of people and support a new candidate. Or at the very least, like I'm going to keep saying, find out when they have the meetings and go to those meetings and let your voice be known. You can go to your city school board at the very least and get the ball rolling, especially since most people are only working on reparations inside their city and state. The conversation about reparations on the national level, I still think, is a strong one and one that needs to be had. But quite frankly, most everybody has nearly abandoned the pursuit of national reparations. Most people who are working on it one state at a time. So that means if you're in California, you need boots on the ground. Here in Virginia, we don't even have a committee. I've been looking for the people who are working on a committee. I can't find them. There are people in Maryland that have a committee. New York has a committee. Illinois has a committee. But most people have literally started working on reparations just in their state. Let me see. Eric Peterman, 9460. One thing about Tariq is he only after the bag. Well, I do believe that's quite an insightful statement. I don't disagree with that. I hate to agree with that. For a hot second, I was a Tariq Nasheed supporter until I saw the truth. It didn't take me long, but I thought he was a stand-up person when I first heard about Hidden Colors, but by the time I consumed all of the information and saw what it was really about, so here come Larry Bird again. Just because I know my lineage doesn't mean I blame anyone for problems. Yes, I joke a lot, but y'all have to understand that being a Pan-African ain't the solution to anything. Well, I joke a lot too. That's why I was clowning you earlier. Now, if you would have said Pan-Africanism ain't the solution to everything, I would say you might got a point. But if you say Pan-Africanism ain't the solution to anything, nope, you go right back in the goofy files. You go right back in the ad hominem attack files, because that's just dead wrong. There's absolutely no logical or historical documented way to show and prove that Pan-Africanism ain't the solution to anything. Pan-Africanism has been the solution to many of the problems and the struggles that we have already overcome. But anyhow, Dark Visions Media says it's a Republican member of California State Assembly introduced a reparations-related bill and called for it to be brought to the floor, to a floor vote in the legislature. Okay, right. So again, I'm not disagreeing with you there, bro. A Republican did some work. That Republican did that work in California. Shout out to him. Hopefully he will stand strong and keep pushing for it. Let me know if he does. Beat Active says, where are the FBA workers' retirement programs created and paid for by FBA? Mr. K says, Darker Business Media. And this Republican you name, does he have a career professional background as a politician, a lawyer, a lobbyist, a trade unionist, a judge to campaign for reparations? Good question. Again, I'm trying to take the stuff on face value. I'm going to put his name into Google in a minute. Esaili is a California attorney, former state legislator, and a federal prosecutor. That's what Darker Visions Media says. So, okay, let me see. Q Black says, that's the race Jasmine Crockett is in, right, for the Texas seat. Yes, it is. They are, those votes are being cast today. I believe the polls are supposed to close at 8 p.m. I'm not 100% sure on that. And usually, like, my little timeline will start jumping, but I haven't seen anything pop off in that respect just yet. Now, at Delaney says not true, but I don't know what you're saying not true too. So, okay, you know, if you can flesh it out a little bit more, and you know, we can keep that conversation going. Darker Vision Media says reparations activists in California were at the Capitol to make sure the bill got a vote, because they had been working on it for years and they decided to take it off of the list. Okay, so Darker Vision Media says he called for a vote for the bill that had been showed by Democratic politicians. I guess you mean stalled by Democratic politicians. So again, okay, so if I go look this up, I'm not, again, so let me look this up. And you said his name is Esayi. All right, so I'm getting that in there. And so here's what the Google is saying, or whatever it's called. So again, yes. What this says, so there is a grain of truth in the Bill Esayi information. However, it wasn't a Republican who originally called for the reparations, but it was a Republican who tried to force a vote on them after the Democrats stalled. Okay, so here's the breakdown of what happened in late 2024 and early 2025. In August 2024, two major reparations bills, SB 1403 and SB 1331, were surprisingly pulled at the last minute by the California Legislative Black Caucus and Democratic leadership. the bills. These would have created a Freedmen Affairs Agency and a reparations fund to oversee future payments. This is what this article is saying. Reports indicated that Governor Gavin Newsom's administration was concerned about the cost and the legal risk of creating a race-specific agency. Democratic leaders chose to shelf the bill rather than force Newsom to veto them right before a major election cycle. Okay, so politics is involved, but hold on, I got a question. Now, maybe Dark Media Visions, you can tell me this. Is there any truth to this statement that there was a legal risk of creating a race-specific agency? Now, I'm asking that question for a very specific reason. Now, Mr. K, if you're still with us, you could correct me if I'm wrong, because I did a video before discussing Clarence Thomas, Judge Joe Brown, and his host, I think her name is Dana, where they were discussing reparations legislation. I don't think they brought up this guy, Bill Isaili, but they did discuss this idea of, they were saying anybody that puts forth, makes an effort or an attempt to create reparations legislation that is specific to a particular race, they were saying the Supreme Court is going to kick that down. Now, I did a video where I was debunking them. But this is an interesting thing, because this news article says that they pulled the legislation because there was a risk of creating a race-specific agency. So if that's why they pulled the bill, then again, I want more information from, the California folk who are closer to the ground on it as to why they pulled the bill. And again, for me, that's just like, this is an information gathering session, because we're clearly not talking about the three stupid stars anymore. So let me see. Mr. K says, I saw Reds with Tariq after Hidden Colors 3 in 2015 when I noticed his plagiarism from the 500 Years Later film for his talking points in Hidden Colors 3. Okay, that's what's up. Mr. K says, to Darker Visions Media. Okay, but does this Republican have an FBA community organization that he works with to serve and protect the interests of FBA? That's a good question, because I am still looking at this article, and it did say something about Bill Isaili not being a friend to the community, but a political stunt, I think is what they said. It said he forced the Democratic Party to either vote for a massive spending project that they were nervous about, or to vote against the very reparations they had been promising their base. Highlight of hypocrisy. He argued that if Democrats were serious about reparations, they shouldn't have tanked their own bills. So again, I'm not mad at him for forcing the vote. I think the vote needs to be forced. I think the vote needs to be forced everywhere. But I think the vote needs to be forced by Black people who have some skin in the game, and not by somebody who seems to be doing a political stunt. But that's neither here nor there. Either way, the vote was forced. Clearly, the Democrats dropped the ball, or so it seems. So now, Darker Visions Media says it was an FBI group that did the. Okay, you must mean it was an FBA group that did the work on the legislation to get the language right, but California Democrats wouldn't put it through, so he called for a vote. Now, I would like for you to prove that, because when I looked it up before, like I said, because I did a video debunking Judge Joe Brown's position on Clarence Thomas being a friend to the reparations community. And when I looked it up, what I saw was there were no FBA organizations. There were no FBA groups. working on the California legislation. Now, if you got some other information, I'm happy to amend my statement. But I never found any proof that there were FBA groups working on the legislation. So let's see, Mr. K, to me, if this Republican has no track record working with a Black community organization for the interests of Black America, then his reparations claim is just lip service. I agree, and to some extent, that's what the article that I found or was reading off of. It was basically, I mean, like it said that there was a bit of a political ploy going on. So now this is also interesting. It says while the strongest versions, while the most ambitious quote unquote cash payment and agency bills were initially blocked by the people who wrote them, the Democrats, I guess, Governor Newsom did eventually sign a few smaller measures into law, including a formal apology from the state for its history of slavery and discrimination, and bills related to health equity and reversing racially motivated eminent domain. And to me, that, I mean, again, I'm not a Californian, so I don't really have weight. I don't have skin in the game in that way. But to me, yeah, that ain't really reparations. So in essence, what you have is the Democrats did try to pull the bills because they did not want the political fallout. And the Republican, noticing that there would be political fallout, said, hey, I'm going to put the bills up again. Now that's gamesmanship, one up for the Republicans. But that speaks to what Mr. K was saying. If that Republican doesn't have a track record of honestly working on behalf of, then you got to at least see that it was a game and it was a ploy designed for political sabotage. Now, what you do with that is on you. Because again, I'm not telling you, you better go vote Democrat. I'm just telling you, call a spade a spade. Yeah, Mr. K is giving the business up in the chat room. I'm gonna leave that one alone. Y'all can duke that out over that chick. Beat Active says there was no FBA member or group working on that legislation. Like I said, again, I ain't gonna dog walk the point. And if the brother, if Dark Media Visions, if he got some names that he want to drop, I'm here to listen and I'm open for it. But like I said, when I did research for the Judge Joe Brown video, and I think maybe one other video that I did, every time I looked up like the people, like I saw the NAACP, and for me, yeah, I was a little shocked. I'll be honest with you. Because I've never been that big of a fan of many of the legacy organizations, many of the civil rights generation organizations, when it comes to issues of a more here and now society. And notice the nuance, the way I'm trying to splice that, because I'm not saying I'm against those organizations. I just think those organizations, they were built with specific goals in mind. And to their credit, they have stuck to those goals. Now, for all of us in younger generations, although I can't say I'm younger, but for all of us who are post-civil rights era, for any of us who offer criticism towards the civil rights era organizations, if you really bout that life, then you will do A, You do one of two things. One, you will join those organizations and help bring them into the new era. Or two, you will create your own organization and fight for what you think is the now fight. If you just sit on the sidelines and saying they ain't doing enough, they ain't doing the right thing, you ain't doing jack. But again, aside from that, if my screen was buffering, so I don't know if y'all was still hearing me, but when I looked it up, the NAACP was one of the organizations in California that was working on reparations. That is definitively not an FBA organization, not by creed, not by ideology. That is an African-American organization. And when I looked it up, none of the people in the group who were working on it, none of them were FBA ideologues. They were African Americans who had been working on reparations for years, if not decades, as African Americans. FBA Mac Blast. Thank you. Thank you for the shout out, FBA Mac Blast. Still giving you dummies the business. Yes, I am. Mr. K says to Larry Bird, listen to MLK's speech in 1957 called The Rebirth of a Nation, when he credits the African independence movements for being an inspiration for the civil rights movement. Appreciate the straight babble coming from the FBA mouths themselves. That's all FBA got is babble. So I appreciate you for confirming the sentiment. Darker Visions Media says, you can't tell us that more Democrats are the solution when I live in a state controlled by Democrats and we're still not getting the legislation we need passed on any level. I didn't say more Democrats are the solution. Now, no, I did not say more Democrats are the solution. What I said was both parties are poison. What I said was, okay, can you tell us that, what was his name? Bill Essayli? Is Bill Essayli going to assist with introducing the legislation again? If Bill Essayli is going to assist with reintroducing the legislation, then we should be talking to Bill Essayli and getting him wherever he need to be so that he can get that legislation introduced again. That's what I'm telling you. I'm telling you, put your money where your mouth is. Put your vote where the people who are supporting what you want to happen. If there is a Republican that's going to push for reparations, then by all means, you go for it. Now, I can say, I don't think that's what Bill Essayli is doing, but that's my opinion, and that doesn't matter. I'm not in California. But if you tell me Bill Essayli is the man to get reparations done, have at it. I'm not going to tell you don't support that man. So Beat Active says, Larry Bird, every lineage is a group and every group needs representatives, leadership, aka organization. So FBA don't have that. What can you expect from the FBA lineage, aka group? Now that's what Beat Active says. Now we can wait for Larry Bird to try to come up with something funny, because that's usually what he do every time somebody asks him a serious question. Mr. K says, yeah, hence why FBA are just keyboard warrior, crybaby loudmouths who just chant they are a lineage and not doing any active organizing work for self-empowerment. You know, I would say other than the ones in California, but we still ain't got no proof and evidence that FBAs are doing it. Now we got proof that a Republican, let me see. So let's see, what can I ask this? I'm trying to put something else into the Google. So here's another good source for you guys. Mr. K says, listen to Malcolm X's speech entitled The African Revolution and Its Impact on the American Negro. You know they ain't gonna listen to that speech. To them, that's just more tether babble. So again, you know, California, like I said, California reparations, Democrats didn't do what they were supposed to do. Republicans tried to embarrass them by putting the legislation up. It seems to me that in a situation like that, you got to apply pressure to both sides. Unless, like I said, unless Bill Essayli is just going to put it up for, if he's going to reintroduce it of his own accord, but you still would then have to apply pressure to the Democrats if there's more Democrats in the offices. It's the same thing I was saying about the Congressional Black Caucus. If you don't have the numbers, you ain't got them. Osborne Ron says the ancestors are in punishment season. Be careful what you say. Now, I don't know who that's directed to. I know I'm standing on strong, solid ground with my ancestors. Because my ancestors did not want. My ancestors are Pan-African. I'll put it to you that way. Mr. K, of course they won't, because they are consummate liars about the African diaspora. Hence why their consummate lies need to be terminated by the Pan-African Terminator. Thank you, my brother. Again, I am still waiting for anybody else that wants to, you know, get this thing rolling. Or like I said, you know, I appreciate the information that Dark Visions Media has brought forth. For the most part, we are kind of sort of in under the same umbrella. He says he's a leftist. I think that was him that said he's a leftist. And he did introduce the fact that a Republican tried to successfully get the reparations bills into the political arena in California. Like I said, I'm with that. The Q Black says that was the same year of Ghana's independence, but an FBA would say MLK wasn't a Pan-African. They sure would. I have heard some FBAs not on, you know, testament to the fact that the FBA ideology is all over the place. There are some FBAs that say, we like Martin Luther King, but he won't no Pan-Africanist. There are some FBAs that say, we can't stand Martin Luther King, and he was a Pan-Africanist. I mean, the disorganization is fraught. It's all over the place. But, you know, so like I said, you know, now we can continue kicking it. If anybody else has anything else, now Mr. K says, well, technically MLK wasn't a Pan-Africanist, but he worked with Pan-Africanists and was a supporter of Pan-Africanism work. And to me, that's all that's all that counts. You know, I'm in favor of Pan-Africanism. I'm in favor of a Pan-African lens. I don't necessarily say everybody has to be a Pan-Africanist. Like, you know, like it's so, as long as you're not a hater, as long as you're not anti, that's really what it boils down to for me. But like I was getting ready to say, you know, Darker Visions Media brought some very good information. Mr. K was hitting everybody with some powerful information. You know, the clowns are always the clowns, the trolls are always the trolls. And they were in here clowning and trolling with very little useful information. We had some of the same talking points. And, you know, like I said, most of the FBA talking points have already been dealt with on multiple videos I've done. You know, if you really want to educate yourself on the talking points, then just go look at some of my other videos. They're there, and the titles make it plain and simple. You know what I'm doing. It's not confusion. Let's see. Mr. K says, also remember, Pan-Africanists have a history of working with non-Pan-Africanists. Exactly. Because you don't have to lay claim to this ideology of Pan-Africanism in order to still say we can work together. You know, agree to disagree is one way to look at it. And as long as we got the same common enemies and we got the same common goals, what's really the end game is what is most important. So let's see. Now, like I said, you know, it would be great if you guys hit the like button. It would be great if you guys hit the share button, hit the bell for notifications, and hit that all button. Let's see. What we got. Just trying to make sure. So if we got anything else going on, I knew there would be another one. There's the troll. A new troll has entered the building. I wonder if this is a real person or a bot. This is the funniest one. Pan-Africanism is a failed ideology. Let's be real with ourselves here. Real is the operative word. Where you from? Are you a real human or are you a bot? FBA-ism is a failed ideology. Pan-Africanism is alive and well everywhere. It's on the continent. It's in the contiguous 48. It's in the Caribbean. It's in Mexico. It's in Canada. It's in Britain. You can't be in all these different places and be failing. So it's just, at best, it's wishful thinking. At worst, it's CIA, COINTELPRO, nanobots. It's hilarious where these fools come from. But like I said, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, this has been the proper perspective. This is your brother Shabazz. We started out this program saying the 3 stars of stupidity in this FBA flag don't make no sense. Or I should have called it the 2 stars, because one of the stars do actually make sense. But 2 stars out of 3 is a fail. 2 stars failing out of 3 means you did 33% of the work. That's an F in every school. Mr. K says, let's be real. You don't know what Pan-Africanism is because you are historically illiterate of Pan-Africanism, because Pan-Africanism is an objective, not an ideology. Beat Active says, in my opinion, Pan-Africanism's foundation is all based on equal unity for the same common purposes. So what's wrong with unity? When unity is a total secured liberty, equality, and prosperity. You know, and that's a good statement, because when you really do look at it and when you boil it all the way down, all FBA want is chaos. They don't want unity. They don't want liberty. They don't even want prosperity. They just want chaos. They want to be able to say, ah, that's all they ever do. This don't work, that don't work. Don't nothing work to the FBAs, except we gonna delineate and do what? Nothing. So the Great 571 says that Pan-Africanism is a joke. Where is the Africans pushing this? See, again, this is the political illiteracy and the stupidity. That's why I don't even pull punches no more. It's just you just stupid. When you make statements like that, where are the Africans pushing this? And so you haven't heard of Ibrahim Traore. You haven't heard of the Sahel states coming together. No, you have not. So you're either politically stupid or you're politically ignorant. Pick your choice. All I see is FBA pushing it. Shabazz, your name is Gerald. And the Great 571, what is your name? Because clearly your mama didn't name you the Great. But hey, you got your 1 second of fame because you wanted to say something and get your name on the screen. I'll put your name on the screen just so you can look like a dummy. Dwayne Johnson, thank God for FBA because they will never bow to white supremacy. FBA is in the pocket of white supremacy. FBA are the lapdogs of white supremacists. And that's why they were so giddy when Tucker Carlson gave them a shout out. Let's see. Do we got anything else jumping off? Dwayne Johnson, unity with people who won't stand up worldwide. Yeah, okay. Again, political stupidity is not your friend. Let's see. Mr. K says, the great, you're too insular about life in Africa to know what the continental Africanism on African soil. So again, now we can kick it. I'm probably gonna get ready to get off here. I am tired. Most of the FBA trolls that's coming in, they're either bots or somebody's sending them in just to keep things riled up. I appreciate the algorithm. But like I said, I appreciate the back and forth, especially shout out to all of the Pan-Africanists and the leftists and the pro-black people who are not fooled by Tariq Nasheed's white supremacist CIA cult membership. I appreciate all of y'all especially, but I do appreciate the FBA trolls. And I appreciate the back and forth. Like I said, I personally learned something tonight. I learned that there was a Republican who put forth the legislation for reparations. Now, that don't mean I'm gonna vote Republican. And even if I lived in California, I'm not sure that would mean that I would vote for Bill Isaili. I'm gonna look him up later and maybe I should do a deep dive on who he is, but we'll see. If there's enough interesting information out there about him, then I will. If not, then But ladies and gentlemen, this is your brother Shabazz. I'm getting ready to sign off. I appreciate everybody for being here. The 3 stars of stupidity was the title tonight. Why the FBA flag makes no sense. I still stand on that position. I still say that in conclusion, you got 1 star that is geographically dishonest, 1 star that is historically contradictory. So that leaves you with 1 star that actually holds any amount of weight. You at the very least need to rethink your program. So if anything that I said, if you want to get some more information about this and other, interesting topics as because FBA is not all I talk about. I do talk about them on a regular because there's so much stupidity coming out of that camp. But I'm really more of a well-rounded Afrocentric pro-Black channel, and I cover politics and other social and other current events. So hit that like button, share this video, share this channel, hit the all for the notifications, and you can continue duking it out on the video page once this video is no longer live. And if you got anything that you want to challenge me about factually, then I will address your comments. I will not address stupidity. I will not address ad hominem attacks. I will not address empty dialogue that has no basis in fact. Other than that, I'm gonna sign off and make sure that I end with this. If y'all can hear this, put a 1 in the chat because I don't know if you can hear it.
Proper perspective. So I'ma put you in your proper perspective. So I'ma put you in your proper perspective.
Hotep to the Pan-African Black world. This is your brother Shabazz, and we out. Peace.
Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection. And whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. Shabazz break it down with the proper perspective.
The proper perspective.